I'm Wrestling of Collinwood for YouTube, Joel Sands, joined by Christine Pierce, Cara Tillitz, Patrick McCray, Gordon Dymowski. We're here to talk Dark Shadows episode 1143, shows about Christine and Cara. So my first question is, why'd you choose this episode?
Big question.
Yeah, that's the big question.
For one,
why not?
It's just a juicy.
Yeah, it's juicy.
It really is. There's a lot of information let out in this episode between several characters, and it changes the course of time.
It does. There's a lot of pettiness in this episode, but I think a lot is revealed in this episode, as far as like relationships go and stuff, and the true relationship of Julia and Barnabas is revealed to Angelique, and that just changes her whole opinion of Barnabas, of Julia, and she takes action, and it just it was too good not to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
I noticed something about Randall Drew for some odd reason, because I looked up pictures of Gordon Russell. He looks like Gordon Russell.
He does look like Gordo.
Yes.
Yeah. Randall Drew might be a Gordon Russell fan insert character. Randall Drew is Gordon Russell's Mary Sue.
Gordon Russell looks like Tony Randall. So where does it end?
Well, does Sam Hull look like Jack Klugman? Because that way you've got the...
Yeah, he has a Klugmanian quality.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of Randall Drew, Roxanne's brother? And we also found out too that he had a relationship with Joanna Mills.
Were Joanna's pants made of Lycra?
I'm wearing pants. They're made of Lycra, cling to me in oh so many ways.
Yes, Randall Drew was. I liked his character because he was kind of an outsider, and we had never met this character, brand new, never met the actor before, but Randall Drew's character wasn't over. He came in because his sister died. Came in for the funeral, but I feel like he wasn't overly suspicious. Didn't jump immediately to conclusions. Had questions, of course, very inquisitive, but not to the point where you're just like, who are you? What do you think you know? You live in Boston or New York, I guess, is where he lives, being a lawyer. But he was a very practical, very logical person, and I like that a lot. And
he just showed going just through natural grief at that moment.
Yeah.
And
he was kind of the voice of reason at times too. So
he was nothing like his siblings either. Like nothing like these.
Middle child syndrome.
He is the heartwarming but slightly less charismatic but still great successor to the Don Briscoe mantle of just being like, somewhere in this there's a nice guy we can trust.
Yeah,
exactly.
Even though he's a werewolf sometimes, who cares? He does that W.C. Fields impression and that wins me over. I love this guy. He's only in this for a few episodes, but he so feels like he belongs. And part of that is that, Dan Curtis had a type, and he fits it. He's the tall kind of, vaguely baritonian, brunette kind of guy. And I love his lack of irony. He is there to be part of the goddamn story and not wink at the audience or comment on it or set himself up for anything other than being, here's a hero. And I really feel like Gene Lindsay and Tom Hopper, who shows up a little later as Thayer David's son, in theory, are both kind of part of a new generation of actors that Curtis is beginning to try out, if the series is going to keep going on.
Right. Agreed.
Gordon?
Oh, I think he was a very sturdy character. I think with Dark Shadows, you kind of need that element of normality, that person who's like, okay, what's going on here? Who can serve as like a counterpoint to all the chaos and other stuff going on. I think he did a wonderful job.
Literarily, that makes him both a reflector character and a normative character.
He's
Go Google that, kids. That's your educational content of this podcast.
he's very much doing what the audience is doing. He's asking questions. I love how he questions his sister about Gerard Stiles in this episode, which is really good. He's like, well, wait, why is he still here? And she's like, oh, Samantha's like, oh, that's my fault. And it's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Isn't it nice to have a character you can just trust? You know, he just wanders on and he has no agenda and you just trust him. It's kind of like every time Gene Lindsay's on the screen, I go,
Yeah, completely.
He's a match. What a guy.
Completely.
We get some really great Angelique interactions between Samantha, between Randall Drew, and Barnabas, of course. So what did you think about Laura Parker's interaction in this episode as Valerie, I should say, sorry.
First of all, and Angelique just like completely just inserted herself into this family this time of just inserted herself. Wasn't
there's no artifice. She's just here, I'm your wife. Deal with it.
Announced to everyone, I am Mrs. Barnabas Collins, and Barnabas doesn't even know she's back.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's just the audacity, you know. And I have to say, I think this is just my opinion, but I think that this, you know, last time we talked about Angelique being, you know, just a, you know, not someone who's not stuck in time. She's all over the place. You know, she can go wherever she likes. But I think this version of Angelique, I think she literally was Angelique 45 years down the road from the vampire.
Totally. She totally is. And she's in an interesting place in her power.
Yes.
Because she's just, you know, she's bulked up since 1795.
Yes.
But she is not kind of hell weary like she is, you know, in 68 and in 1795 or 1897, where, you know, she's the wisest of them probably.
I agree. I agree. And just to see that carnal version of Angelique, you know, 45 years down the road, you know, because she's coming back every year to make sure that Barnabas is still there and hasn't escaped. And she hasn't grasped the fact that this isn't Barnabas 45 years out of his coffin. This is Barnabas, you know, more than 100 years after being put in that coffin. And she hasn't quite, you know, you're different this time. What's changed? You know, you've changed a lot. And how long have you been out? You know, and she doesn't understand. And I love when we finally get that, and she's just blown away by that. You know, she can't comprehend the relationship that Barnabas and Julia have. It's not a love affair. It's not a victim affair. It's just because Julia is so devoted to him, and she can't handle that. And that just, I love it.
Well, because she's been the most devoted up to that point, as far as she knows. I don't think she
can't comprehend that without being infatuated or in love with him.
Yeah. And her way to remedy that was to make Julia what Barnabas is. That's how badly she couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
So
Is she really going there to make sure he's still in there? Or is she going there kind of hoping he's gotten out?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a love ritual.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely.
With her, it wouldn't surprise me, but at all. And he went away. Okay.
I was talking to you.
Rude. No.
Yeah.
She probably goes in, opens up the coffin. Okay, he's still there. Go, and then leaves.
Yeah.
She probably every so often, you know, just goes to visit him and.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, he's still there.
Time to go.
Kind of like, say, it's like the 18th century version of Facebook stalking. You know, oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Yes,
for sure.
But no, I think Angelique is wonderful, especially seeing where she is with Julia, because where she's confronting her about, oh, you're from 1870, and Julia is just like, you would think that Julia, you know, this isn't the 1967, 68 Julia of, oh my God, I want to give everyone a sedative. She's, you think you could? She's not only holding her nerve, and not losing it, I could expect in the back of her head, she's thinking, you know what? I could whomp this Angelique with a broken lawn chair and get away with it. I mean, I could see like if the show had if the show had continued and say they needed to get a new Barnabas and they're still working on that, they could have Angelique and Julia as natural antagonists, because these are two women who are devoted to Barnabas. One is more on the kind of extreme infatuation, and the other is just Barnabas has learned how to be friends with this person. And yes, Julia may have feelings for Barnabas, but she's more willing to kind of put them aside and work on, let him be who he is.
Yeah.
Whereas Angelique is just like, oh, Barnabas is mine and I got to prove it, especially at this point in her timeline.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I really love the Laura Parker's character's Valerie / Angelique's reaction to finding out where Julia's from.
Yeah.
It's really, really good, and it's criminally underrated.
Yeah.
Because she's now coming to the realization, okay, that's where Barnabas came from. And I think it's really great writing. Gordon Russell wrote this episode, by the way. Laura Parker narrated it. Henry Kaplan directed it. And it's really well done, her interaction with Julia, where she's giving veiled threats toward Julia. She's letting her know, like, I could get rid of you if I wanted to. And even Julia says, well, you could use your magic. I know your powers. You're more than capable of getting rid of me. And Angelique's like, I'm gonna enjoy myself getting rid of you. Feeling. It's like, and when she does when she puts her to sleep, it's like, oh God, Jesus, like it's gonna get bad. It's gonna get real bad.
And it does.
I love Roxanne's outfit they have her in for her vampire turn. It is one of the most beautiful costume designs for a vampire.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, but I think by far, just the way the imagery that they did with her and the costume and the makeup, I think for me, she was one of the scariest vampires just by looking at her. Like, just the look of her, she was
terrifying coming out of the shadows over there.
Yeah, between the shadows.
Oh,
yeah.
It's really nice to see a scary female vampire. We saw this. We saw how they used they used her as who was the vampire. We weren't sure who the vampire was in 1970. And I love how they did that there. And then the reveal of it is shocking. And to see her here as a vampire, obviously, again, it's really good. And I mean, both are really excellent. She's one of the most unsung vampires of the series.
Yeah.
And what do you think of? Obviously, Angelique opens up her wounds. There's how sadistic is Angelique in this time period, ladies?
She's Angelique.
She's petty. But I mean, that's not unlike Angelique, it's
I think for once with Angelique, like there were people around her that knew more than she did about something that she really created, like the whole vampire and Barnabas. He passed it down to Roxanne. And like when she found out about Julia, like she didn't know anything. And that's what I loved about that conversation with Julia and Angelique too, is Julia just gave it up like that. She's like, okay, yeah. Here's this information. Let's see how you handle it.
Yeah.
But Julia conveniently omitted the marriage to Sky Rumson, because even Julia Hoffman has her limits.
Yes. Yeah.
I would like to have that conversation, honestly.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You married a guy who was secretly working for the Leviathans. It turned out really well, sweetie.
It really did.
Yeah.
I'm sure the honeymoon was a blast. What's everybody's favorite scene from this episode?
The little mini showdown between Angelique and Julia. I loved it.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
she's like, I know Barnabas. She's like, you do not know him, and you will never know him as well as you think, and instead of taking that comment and being like, oh, she was more fascinated with the fact I'm going to be alive 140 years from now or whatever
Right.
it is, and it's like, okay, but what about the other thing she just said?
Well, Angelique kind of even said it. She was like, she was more fascinated with the fact that I'm going to be alive 100 years. And she's like, well, I don't care about I don't care about changing time. I don't care about changing
She's like,
timeline.
I'm more concerned about, the fact that
being
you two
alive.
might be stuck in this period. That's
Yeah.
what concerns me the most.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
that's the case, then she's got to get rid of Julia somehow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was my favorite. I love that whole mini
I think
showdown.
so too.
But
Or like even with Barnabas in the old house at the very beginning of the episode, kind of, where she was like, so don't try to act all this or that. Don't even bother. She was like,
Yeah.
don't even try to make
I
excuses.
know what you're gonna say. Don't even bother.
And he's like, okay, I won't. And I like that.
Jordan?
Yeah, I have to say the showdown between Julia and Angelique, because it's very well written, and Grayson Hall is she does more with her eyes than she does with her voice. Like, her voice is completely, it's like, it's not even, you don't hear a quiver. And I like the fact that she basically says, oh yeah, I know you in the future. I kind of felt almost setting up a predestination paradox where it's like, well, if I tell you this, you're going to be like, oh, so it's like again, I think Julia at this point is she's moved from being besotted with Barnabas to, yeah, okay, it's never going to happen, but I'm gonna take Angelique down. Like,
Yes.
you can really see where she's like, oh, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay, great.
We can hear you and see you. What's your favorite scene in this episode, Patrick?
Oh, well, I mean, it has to be. I mean, there are a lot of good ones, but I love the conversation, of course, that Julia has with. It's like I'm on a ship that's sinking. The submarine's going down. I love the conversation that Julia has with Angelique, of course, where she just outs everything. It's just fantastic. I love the idea that Barnabas has just said, boy, I sure have feelings for your sister. And then, he goes and tells Angelique, or, something like that. And you know that something terrible is going to happen, and it does. So, I mean, this is, Joel, when you asked the opening question, with what sounded like a little skepticism, I wasn't sure, why'd you choose this episode? I was like, my God, how could you not? I really regret that there's not, I don't think there's a daybook entry about this yet, but boy, I could do a whole book just based on this. It's a delight. Wow.
Yeah.
The favorite scene I have is, it's not the Roxanne out of her coffin. I love how they shoot the mausoleum scene where they show these flowers and they're panning down and you see her lying in her coffin. I think that's so neat how they did that. And it gives that sense of realism and danger to come, though, too. And then when you see what happens later and the little things that are being set up, it's like, yeah, it's gonna turn bad. And then Roxanne as the vampire, in just the teeth, her arms stretched out. It's just one of the best scenes in this episode. I love it to death.
Yeah.
What's the character Randall Drew? Do you wish they would have did more with him?
I wish they'd have kept him around longer.
Yeah.
Because I liked what they did with his character. I don't think that they could have done, I don't think they should have done any more or any less with him, because like y'all said, he's a character that we trusted. And I think if they'd have done any more with him, it would have been a little too over the top. It would have been too, I don't even know the right word, but too forced maybe, yeah. But no, I mean, I just kind of wish they'd kept him around a little longer.
Yeah, and I think at this point in the series, the writers are, first, I think the writers are at the top of their game here, because they don't, but they're fighting whether it's network pressure, declining ratings, Dan not doing his morning golf putting. I think they were, I don't know what kind of time constraints they were on. And I don't think that even if they had the desire to do more with him, and I think he's a great character, I think they would have been bound by, we got to keep the story moving. And I mean, that's one of the things about when she hit 1995 on, it's just move forward, move forward. There's no bloat, there's no draggy bits, there's no wasted time. Let's get this, let's get to the point, let's move this forward. And it's one of the things that I know a lot of Dark Shadows fans complain that like anything after 1897 is really not that good. And I'll say that like the Leviathan arc has its strengths, the Parallel Time has its strength. But once you hit 1995 onward, this is about as punk rock as Dark Shadows gets. It's all killer, no filler.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
fantastic.
Yeah, with 1995, it felt like George A. Romero was taking over Dark Shadows, and that was scary as shit.
It really was.
Like when I first watched the series, I never thought it would be like they're going to show the end of the world in their sense, and I was glad I was wrong because that was like for a 60s show, that's ballsy as hell.
Yeah. And I mean, as the show progressed from that point, it just got more risque. Like I mean, we're not even talking about this, but at the end, when they go into Parallel Time again of 1840, they've got a baby out of wedlock here, and that was pretty ballsy for that time too. That was the one that stuck out to me when we're talking about taking risks on a show. But yeah,
I wonder
that.
I wonder how much 1995 was like just the writers and Dan Curtis. There's some like network suit who's like, oh, you need to, we need to cancel the show. They're complaining they're not taking any risks. And they're like, okay, let's give you 9 episodes of Collinwood in ruins. And that network guys say, oh, okay, you're right. You win. I mean, it's just from there, it's just solid into the whole Ragnarok. Preventing the future, and then straight into 1840. It's this segment of Dark Shadows, I think, is very underrated.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I thoroughly agree.
Yeah.
I mean, and for people just say that after 1897 it wasn't that good. I have to disagree. I mean I understand the Leviathans has its low points, but it's chock stuff too, and so is Parallel Time, but I enjoyed every single bit of it. I don't think it got bad after that. I think if anything it got better, especially when they get to this point in time, because I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, like waiting to see what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And
like you were saying, like at this point in time in the show, like they were just writing killer no filler stuff, and episodes like this are easy to overlook at times because there's so much
there's
going
so
on.
many like them,
like the stuff that is going on just an episode or two later.
Yeah,
like it's easy to overlook, but how those episodes led up is this one right here.
Yeah,
and like
agreed.
It's full.
I have a question though. We operate on a weird assumption, and that is that we've all absorbed the Catherine Lee Scott books and everything else, and so there is kind of a fan narrative that's based on how the show was interpreted 50 years ago. And I wonder now that this is out on streaming and the whole show kind of exists at once and people can see it in any order they want, and they know that they know when the ending's coming, and they know that they can just go back and start it from any storyline they like. If maybe the attitude towards this one has sweetened a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, I do. I agree.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the Leviathan arc in a sense of character development and what they do. I do think that when they had a nice plot, werewolf versus these creatures who can seemingly travel through time and do all sorts of stuff, I think was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest issue with the Leviathan arc is it's a bit like Moonlight and Marvel, that it becomes too much. Okay, first you say a werewolf's their weakness. That's great. It's sort of like a superhero or a supervillain. When you give them a weakness, give them one only, or very little. When you keep giving them more and more and more, what made them so strong to begin with?
Right.
When you keep giving them more, it makes them less. And I think that's the one thing. It's a great arc again, it's terrifying because one of the most terrifying things I've ever heard about it is the breathing, because it made you wonder, what the hell are these things?
Mm-hmm.
It kept that question going in every way, even with Jeb Hawks.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell? Like, this is terrifying. Like, what are they going to do? But
Right.
when they said Chris Jennings is sort of your answer, the werewolf, it's like, oh, this is going to get good. You're expecting this big battle between a werewolf and these creatures, and when it doesn't happen, and you start adding in this, that, it's sort of like, well, wait, they only had one weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have ghosts. Now their weakness is also the supernatural. It's like, it's too much. You're making you put this big strong heel, and now you weaken them less and less.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the other thing too is when you're coming off of 1897, which is big and grand and epic, I can see the writers thinking, you know what, I'm not sure we can come up with anything that big and grand that's going to eclipse it. So let's focus on character, because a lot of the Leviathan arc, I see it as more of like a paranoid invasion of the body snatchers type story. You don't know you don't know who's on what side. And it makes sense for a soap opera because it's all about interpersonal relations. You don't have to worry about special effects. The only one is the breathing. And to quote a very famous author and wise man, basically it was making Thayer David running up and down a flight of stairs and start breathing heavily into a microphone. And then with Parallel Time, that was simply a matter of production issues. You've got half your cast making a movie. You've got a group of actors who you can utilize more. So what do? Let's just, rather than try to explain, like, okay, half the Collins family is at a history conference in Boston, you just throw in this whole parallel world thing. So by the time you get to 1840, it's like, I think the writers were, I like to think of it as the writers were like trying to stretch themselves, because after a certain point, it's like, we can try different things in this format. And I think it's easy when you come across, in any series, when you come across a period you don't like, to kind of parallel what Patrick said. It's easy to go oh, well, it was never popular. Well, no, it didn't appeal to you, but
Right.
there are still strengths in it. And I think this episode is a good reason why I think a lot of this period is underrated, because it's literally, there's a great arc. You start with, okay, we know Roxanne's dead, to Roxanne rises as a vampire. You've got the Barnabas arc. You've got Julia and Angelique. I mean, there's an efficiency here that you don't see a lot in, especially kind of maybe early Dark Shadows, and even the initial Barnabas arc. There's a confidence and a strength here that really makes it. It's like the show decided, okay, we're no longer a soap opera. We're just a gothic supernatural drama.
Yeah.
And they stuck to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you were saying, I think that's what made it even better than some earlier parts of the show. I mean, they just ran with it, and it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they know exactly what they're doing. They have, it's everything from 1897 plus, and that's why I like to think of it as not a matter of them repeating themselves, it's cyclical.
Yes, exactly.
And I hesitate to say it's like a poem. Every stanza rhymes, but it is cyclical. That they revisit certain themes and motifs just like a piece of music would, but it has the richness of what's come before, and you see them applying that wisdom. Both the writers applying it to the show and the characters applying it to what's going on.
Definitely. That's good. That's very good.
Here's a question for you. Do you ever think, like, when if Mark B. Perry gets his Dark Shadows series approved somewhere, do you think we'll get a Phantom of the Opera episode or arc?
Maybe. I don't quite know how they would do that. Jewel, for you, what does that mean?
Well, here's the thing. I've seen the movies, but I prefer the Phantom of the Opera episode from MacGyver entitled Cleo Rocks. Okay.
Is that the one with Gerard Butler?
That's the that's the one where Michael Desbarres, Murdoch, is this. He's like the stage director, and he's all in this makeup and stuff, and he's directing Penny Parker, who's singing. By the way, Michael wrote the song Cleo Rocks for that episode, which is funny. And Pete Thornton is going undercover and shit, and MacGyver's there to support his friend who got this audition, and slowly discovering clues left behind by some mysterious phantom. And as he unravels the clues, he realizes, oh shit, it's Murdoch. Maniac.
Was Dana Elfar blind at this point? Did they send him to do an assignment without being able to see? Did they do that to him? Tell me that didn't happen.
I don't believe so.
Had he been hit by the nude bomb yet?
Don't believe so.
Because that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was there.
I was there too in '79 when the nude bomb hit.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's talking about it now, but back then.
Yeah, it was a national trauma.
We lived in fear.
Yeah. But the Phantom of the Opera is an interesting story.
Right back.
It's about this creature who falls in love with this woman, in a sense, but I don't know how Dark Shadows would do it, but
I was gonna say they maybe could have fitted in slightly, maybe with like the whole Bruno and Angelique thing, where he's just all obsessed and mused by her.
Oh, to Angelique.
Yeah.
Fit it in somewhere in there.
Bruno.
Whose pants are not made of lycra.
You could have.
No. And I don't know how they cling to him, but it's not in so many ways.
Duct tape, pretty much. Duct tape.
Is there anything anybody wants to add about episode 1143?
Thanks for letting us pick, because this, oh man, I've been looking forward to this.
Keep picking. Yeah, keep picking. You guys are you're aces.
When's our now we're paying tribute to somebody tomorrow night, Patrick. So
That's right.
When do you guys want to do the next Daybook episode? Tuesday.
Part of that?
Yeah, you can Tuesday.
Cool.
I just
Tuesday,
yeah.
Is 10:30 good for everybody, or?
Oh yeah.
10:30.
Okay. The episode I'm picking is 666, and no, not because it has the devil in it.
We'll let you have that one. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Just kidding. I don't want to be a part of this. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I should have saved that episode number for Halloween just to fuck with everybody, but no.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are officially going off the rails of the crazy train.
Yeah.
Also, the links to Between the Shadows and Dark Shadows podcast. Go check out these ladies. They're very, very intelligent. Gordon Dymowski, link to his Amazon page, and link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound, where you can get that on Amazon, is going to be in the description box. First of all, thank you everybody for tonight. And Patrick, I'll see you tomorrow night. And everybody, I'll see you Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
Tuesday.
See you later.
Tuesday. Bye, guys. Bye, ladies.
Bye.